Stephanie Lueras, amazing. She lost over 200 pounds. 200 pounds. She's a personal trainer. She's a fitness nutrition specialist. Her attitude and her angle is quite unique, and it's more about body positivity. How she views discipline is very interesting as well. A very interesting perspective on that. When I lost all the weight, I had a kind of a come to Jesus moment. The doctor said, you're not going to be around for your daughter. But she didn't have any of that. She just kind of saw some things and just decided to make slow changes. Everybody approaches it differently. And how we get people to that place is very interesting, with obesity and overweight being close to 75% here in the US, serious issue. How can we help others that need to get to that point? But she has great content on her site about sleeping and about accountability, which is huge. Try to find somebody who's accountable to lose weight. But just a great conversation with Stephanie. I really enjoyed it. I know you will too. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic. I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family, in their passion, in their careers, and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Thanks, Stephanie, for doing this. I really appreciate this. How are we going to get America fit again, Stephanie? I mean, obesity, overweight, it's like 75% in our country, isn't it?
I honestly don't stay on top of that particular statistic, but when it comes to being fit, when it comes to looking at the individual health
Mm.
outcomes, it has to be that personal action that happens. And everyone gets inspired in different ways to take action.
Yeah, they certainly do. Now, you lost over 200 pounds. Is that correct?
Correct. And I did it without intentional dieting. It was through habit change. It was through little things each day that created the giant ripple effect to massive change, not only in my physical wellness, but my emotional and spiritual wellness as well.
And what was your kind of, you just mentioned this kind of rock bottom, or you kind of come to Jesus moment. What
Mhm.
happened?
Well, I'm a person that has been overweight my entire life. I was put on my first diet at 5 years old. So if there's a diet out there, I've seen it, I've heard of it, I've tried it, I've probably gained and lost weight on it. I've gained and lost hundreds and hundreds of pounds in my life.
Wow.
And I had just resigned myself to dieting is done. It's off the table because clearly something's not working.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I hit this place of things aren't quite right. I don't feel well. I'm not happy. I feel like I'm just spinning my wheels in life. And it wasn't like this great epiphany moment, but it was one of these things where I'm like, okay, something's got to change. I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but let's start looking around and seeing what can be changed. And for me, the very easiest tangible thing to do was start to drink water.
Mm.
And it wasn't like this giant gallon of water and you do all the crazy water challenges. It was a 6-ounce cup of water and a kitchen timer. Every time the timer went off, it was go to the end of the office and back and fill up at the water cooler, building that habit. And then it was another habit of cooking at home, being conscious of what I was cooking at home. Then at this point, this is a little bit down the way, then it's okay. I feel like I'm in a place for physical activity. What can I
Mm.
do? Well, being in a body 200 pounds heavier, I was pretty close to losing my mobility. So, in the back of my mind, the only thing possible is walking. So, okay, I'm going to walk. It's to the end of the street and back. And I did it in flip flops because just putting on shoes was too much
Wow.
work. And I wanted to die in that, but it was that repetitive motion down the street, around the block, around the neighborhood, building up endurance. Come up to this point of I'm out walking one day and I'm like, I wonder if I can run. Now, this is a foreign concept to me because I'm the kid that fakes sick in gym class. So running not would be on the top of my radar. But again, there was a stop sign like 50 yards down the road. I'm like, all right, gonna run there. It was that I want to die moment again, but something in me lit up in that. And I came home and I'm like, I got to figure out this fat girl running thing because there's something to it. I really like this. This is the movement for me. And so from there, it's again those small progressions of building up endurance, stamina, the strength required. And became, instead of that 50 yards, it was 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, jumping over into triathlon and finding my love of movement being in endurance sports. I know that's not for everybody, but it was this whole progression of just very small, livable steps that could be done every day.
Wow, how inspiring. So I that one moment that I'm gonna liken it to, like, an artist creating, music or something. You had to receive some kind of inspiration that made you want to start drinking water. I mean, that's really the first thing, I think. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could tell you with myself, I had started a business. All of a sudden, I was, 340 pounds. I was working a lot, and I had a daughter. The doctor said to me, "You're pre-diabetic. Do you want to see your daughter graduate from school?" So it was that just turned me completely. And I went to water, and I started exercising. I lost about 140 pounds, but still, and I'd always been an athlete my whole life. I it just kind of crept up on me, but. That was the moment the doctor's saying, "Hey, you're not going to see your daughter," but you didn't have that. You say it just kind of crept up on you. You just kind of evolved to it.
Yeah. And, a lot of people have that wake up
Mm.
moment where I have these health conditions or these markers of concern. Personally, for me, I never had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, prediabetes, anything where the doctors were sitting here telling me you're at risk for
Wow.
this, other than the fact you're overweight. Like, you are an anomaly because you look fascinating on paper. You are 100% where we would like you to be, except guess what? The scale doesn't
Right.
fit the picture. And so that was something I always kind of wrestled with. But you talk about that, what was the one thing? And I can really remember the day that I'm like, okay, this is the first thing we're going to do. We're going to drink water. I was sitting in my office. at that time, I was the administrator for an international nonprofit. I was a pastor. Everything looked great on the outside, wearing all these hats and managing these employees, all the things. But I just kind of looked up and I'm like, there's something different than this. Like, even how I was treating people, how I was treating my spouse was a reflection of how I felt about
Wow.
myself because I just didn't feel good. So that reflected in everything else I did. And it was one of those thoughts that's like, there just has to be something different.
Yeah, and I think this is why this is so important is that I'm sure you would too, like others to have this moment, because, if they're going
Mhm.
to the doctor and none of those signs are there but you're just overweight, eventually it'll, you know, I would think eventually it'll, the markers will show up. So what can we do? Every once in a while I joke around at my wedding, I was so overweight. And I say to my buddies, why did you let me be that fat? I push it on them. I'm kidding, of course,
Mhm.
tongue in cheek. But I wonder, like, what can we do with our friends that are overweight? It's such a delicate, topic. And how can we bring them to that moment? For me, it was, something drastic. For you, it wasn't. But how can we encourage people to get to that point so they can make the move?
Well, I'm totally with you on the whole wedding
Mhm.
experience, looking at the wedding pictures, because I look back now and I'm like, that
Exactly.
is not who I
Yeah.
am. But it's one of those things, it comes back to that body autonomy. Anyone that is overweight, that is obese, that falls into these clinical categories, it's no big
Mm.
secret that we're
Mm.
fat. Like, we hear it from
Mm.
everywhere. You hear it from medical professionals, you hear it from the media, you hear it from the culture
Mm.
at large. We
Mm.
get it. But until someone is ready to look at their health outcomes, what's going on in life, and potentially the outcome. Like, just like you said, if I don't change something, I'm not going to be here
That's
for my
right.
children. And so it has to be something that drives the individual to say, there's going to be something different.
Mm. Hmm. And I remember thinking as I was losing the weight, I I didn't do anything too drastic. I kept eating what I was eating. I just cut it in half. And I got rid of all of soft drinks and I went to water just like you said. And I had some, green tea cold that was unsweetened with 0 calories. So those were the two big dietary shifts. And then I just started working out every day. And then before you know it, I lost, well, over about 7 months, I lost about 100 pounds. And I remember thinking, I had to get all new clothes and everything. And I remember thinking, it's not that hard, people. Just you got to be focused. Now, you talk a lot about goal setting and not changing the
Mhm.
goal, just changing the way you get there.
Right. That's one thing that I try to shift the
Mm,
perspective, because when we focus solely on weight, when we solely focus on that weight loss, it's easy to lose momentum when we get discouraged, when life inevitably is going to happen. So when someone sits down with me and says, I want to lose X number of pounds, that's
mm,
awesome. That's great. You have decided, here's where I want to be. But losing a particular amount of weight, what does that do for you? Why do you want to lose weight? Well, I want to maybe feel better. Okay, what does it mean to feel better? And we keep asking that question, why? Because then we start to get into really specific things of, I want my clothes to fit better. I want to be able to get up if I fall on the floor
mm,
without assistance. I want to keep up with my kids or my grandkids. I want to do these very specific things or be or feel these very specific ways. That then gives us some very actionable places, because then we see, okay, We can look at nutrition, sleep,
Mm.
movement, balance, stability, strength training, cardiovascular endurance. We can look at really specific areas. And then those are the things where we start to take the baby steps, looking at your nutrition, developing that fitness program, and making those incremental changes. Now, that's where we start to get into that gray area, because nobody can 100% guarantee sustained weight loss. You might lose weight, but for that long-term change, if we're looking at those action steps, those positive movements that we're taking, not physical, but all the
Mm.
things that are altering our health outcomes, you're going to reach that underlying goal, that I can do this, I feel this way, I look like this. Your body composition is likely changing and a whole lot of other things, but the scale might or might not
Mm.
change. And so we have to watch how much stock we're putting in just that one independent number, and looking at the grander scale of what are you actually accomplishing and what is the transformation effect.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Excuse me. Because there's times where I just feel like my clothes don't fit me right. I just don't, and there's other times where it does. And I weigh myself and I'm the same weight, but I just, there's, times where it's just not the same. And yeah, you can't, they say you shouldn't weigh yourself every day, correct?
Correct. In fact, I beg my clients, don't weigh
Mm,
yourself. Because we get into this place of I need to weigh every day, I need to weigh once a week. But what is that number actually
mm,
telling you, independent of everything else? And so, like, I ask people, like, if you absolutely dependently need that number, just do it once a month,
mm,
just to get that benchmark. But if you're focusing on other places of measurement, other places of being able to see the tangible results of those goals, the scale will take care
hmm.
of itself.
Very good point. And you mark yourself as a body positive personal trainer. I've never kind of heard that kind of angle before. Can you expand on that? And I think it's what we're talking about now.
Absolutely. The reality is not everybody walks into the gym and has this amazing experience with movement. A lot of people have barriers to fitness, whether it's real or
Mm,
perceived, based on age, size, ability, chronic conditions, whatever it is that we say, that's great for you, but it's not for me. And so bringing in that body positivity, and that's a whole different place than
mm,
self-love. We're talking at the very baseline, acceptance, accepting who you are, where you are at this moment, and understanding that no matter what that looks like, we can start to make progress. There might be adaptations, there might be modifications, but there's some type of movement, there's some type of fitness regimen that not only works for you, but it's going to feel good. You're going to enjoy it. Because at the end of the day, if we don't enjoy whatever movement that is we're engaging in, it's not going to be consistent
mm,
for the long
mm.
haul.
And that's the fundamental problem with diets, correct?
Yes, because diets themselves come from this place of
Mm,
restriction, that you can do this, you can't do that. These are the things you can eat, these are the things you can't eat. And we get this very black and white thinking that if I stray away from the obligatory rules that have been put in process, that I'm bad, that I failed. And ultimately coming into an emotional place of not only have
mm,
I failed, but I'm a failure, when it was the structure you were engaging in failed. And it's starting to open up and looking at things in a very different way. Like you said, I ate the
Mhm.
same things, I just cut
That's
the
right.
portions. It we get a little bit greater than the yes and no columns and the this is healthy and
Mm.
unhealthy, but really starting to get back to those innate cues that we were created with, that those hunger, satisfaction, and fullness cues, that we don't have to restrict this food, then fixate on it, and ultimately then say, forget it, I'm going to eat this, and go and eat it to excess. We can enjoy everything and still feel good, but it's looking at the greater picture of what are we doing? How does this make me feel?
And that's why, yeah, well said. And that's why a lot of the diets, people lose all this weight and then they just gain it back, Stephanie. And it's terrible.
Yeah, and the studies show that yo yo dieting has a greater negative impact on
Mm.
people's health than remaining in a larger body and engaging in healthier
Wow.
habits.
Wow.
So that's that awkward place of, well, what is best for me? And that's different for everyone.
Mm.
But it comes down to those fundamental pieces of what are the health outcomes you're chasing and what are the changes we can make to move you towards that fits your lifestyle, that fits your schedule, that fits your budget. Because ultimately, when we superimpose something on life and it doesn't jive, it might last for a few days, a few weeks, maybe even a few months. But if it's not fitting life, it's ultimately going to
Hmm.
go away. Those small incremental changes don't create a lot of waves in the everyday. And it really starts to build momentum. The problem is, it's not sexy. You don't see the dramatic change overnight. You don't see this massive transformation all at
Mm.
once, like we tend to with a lot of traditional dieting in that place of restriction. By putting in those small movements, those small actions, it has a huge ripple effect, but sometimes we don't see that except for in
Hmm.
hindsight.
I mean, I typically now I employ 80/20. Is 80% of the time I eat really well and then I splurge, a Saturday, I splurge 20% of the time. That works for me.
Yeah.
It's.
And that's important to know what works for
Mm.
you. Sometimes, whether it's your habits or how you're wired or your emotional relationship with food, only having that cheat day or only this day where I eat these foods, that plays an impact on how we exist
Hmm.
around food and that relationship with it. So it is finding what works for you and coming back to what feels good. Is there a particular way of eating? Are there particular foods that make me feel good, that give me the energy, that don't make me feel like I've got a brick in my stomach? What are those things that really serve me well? What are the foods that are not serving
Mm.
me well? In finding that balance in the middle of, okay, here's what I'm going to eat, and maybe massaging it around a little bit, having it in greater frequency, less frequency, or maybe understanding this just doesn't work for me. And it's a different place of letting that go instead of you can't eat this,
Hmm.
because we're making choices that support ourselves. And it comes down very clearly to everything is a
Mm.
choice.
Yeah, well said and great perspective. What are your thoughts on intermittent fasting?
Intermittent fasting, I've read a lot of studies, and Yes, it works for some people. For a large majority of people, it's not
Mm,
sustainable because it the idea of intermittent fasting, depending on really how structured you are with it, takes away the autonomy of following those innate hunger, satisfaction, and fullness cues. Intermittent fasting in and of itself isn't a bad thing. But when we get so rigid with the
mm,
feeding windows that I absolutely can't
hmm,
bend on this, then that gets problematic. But if we're willing to experiment, willing to see, well, maybe what is that optimal window for me? And if I have a day or a period of time where it's not serving me, am I willing to be a little bit flexible with it? And just understanding that what works right now might not work
mm.
tomorrow.
Yes. You have a lot of great content, Stephanie, on your site where you give these great, essays on various topics. And one I really enjoyed was sleep. I feel the three pillars are, what you're eating, your diet, exercise, and sleep. Those three are essential. And too many people, I hear too many people, you mention it in your great discourse about they think 3 or 4 hours, that's all they need. I mean, I know I need seven, and I'm optimal. Please expand.
Absolutely. Sleep is, we undermine its
Mm,
magic because
mm,
somewhere in society we've put valor into success means I'm going to get as little
yeah.
sleep as possible and operate optimally with all of this time that I have granted myself. Now there is no magic amount of sleep. We know as adults it can be anywhere from 7 to 10 hours. I'm a 7 to 9
Mm,
hour girl. Like, if it has to be in that window. Any less, I don't feel well. Any more, I
mm,
don't feel well. And so you have to experiment for you. But we know 3, 4, 5 hours isn't enough because the body is busy in sleep. It is restoring, it is recovering,
hmm,
it is going through digestive processes that don't happen during the waking hours. Our body is very busy at a
very
systems
interesting.
level. So if we're not sleeping, our body isn't getting what it needs to operate fully and functionally during our waking hours. The
Hmm,
other part of that is not only sleep, but rest. We've done a really good job of forgetting what rest is. That we have these waking hours, and these have to be filled with all of these optimized activities and schedules. And we don't give ourselves a place to take a deep breath. Now, rest is different for every single person because what provides you rest, what provides you relaxation, may be completely different than somebody else. But finding what it is that is restful for you, that gives your mind a break, that gives your body a break. Now, when I say gives your body a break, it's not necessarily always sitting on the couch with
mm.
Netflix. It could be going for a walk, going for a hike, engaging in some activity, because that is where you find restoration when you're awake. But there has to be this marrying of not only good quality sleep, but rest that really keeps us going. And it's fundamental because there are hormones that come into play. There's that emotional state that has the ripple effect into our physical health. That if we're not rested, if we don't have that good sleep, you may encounter issues losing weight. You may encounter issues with sports performance or even just having the energy to get through the day.
And you're a big fan of naps. I am too. I took one today.
Absolutely. I personally have restructured my schedule that I actually take a little bit of a lunchtime. And after lunch, I'm good with my nice little nap before I come back into the rest of my day, because my
Mm,
day is long. I start early and I end not late, but it's a long span of time. And so for me, taking that time out, not only for consistent eating, but to turn off the devices, get away from what I'm doing and give my body a chance to recharge a little bit, I'm able to continue through the day at that same high level that I
hmm.
started it.
Yeah, absolutely. And another great topic you cover, and perhaps this is the most important as far as people losing weight and getting into shape, and that's accountability. Now, in my particular case, I didn't tell anybody. The doctor talked to me, and I said, you know what, I'm not. I'm just going to do this. I don't want to get anybody involved. I'm just going to keep my head down and let them notice. But I was very different. But I think most people need some accountability. Did you have somebody accountable when you were in this mode?
I still do. And I have lots of avenues of
Mm,
accountability, and it looks different because we get this idea of what accountability is, in that it's almost this dirty word that somebody's going to be always
that's right.
tapping on my shoulder or always looking at
That's
what
right.
I'm doing, and almost more that, whip behind us to keep us going. But accountability really is this beautiful thing of the people, of the programs, of the structures that support us to where we want to be. And so and often it helps us to break it down into the smaller pieces and have a lot of different places for accountability. I look at that physical vein, and I have my coach, I have my sports dietitians, I have those people in that physical area. But in that emotional piece and those goals that I have in that area, that those places I want to grow, therapy is
Mm,
amazing. I look at even just those friends that I know are very safe places to bounce things off of. That spiritual growth in the third pillar, in looking at, and it's not necessarily what you believe. We all believe something, but that spiritual part of ourselves, is it stagnant or is it growing? And it can be groups. It can be that formal religious structure. But what and who is in that court, pushing you, encouraging you, asking questions, providing resources, because we don't have all the answers. And sometimes we're not open to going and finding them. But by intentionally putting those people in those structures in place to know that we're not alone is really
mm.
important for long-term success.
Yeah, and finding somebody. I mean, do you recommend a family member or a friend or a trainer? Do you have any recommendation as far as accountability for people?
So I do not recommend family
Mm,
members, because that just creates an odd
right.
dynamic. Sometimes our family members can be extra hard
Mm,
on us because and it's out of
yeah.
love. They want the best for us, but also at the same time, they might not even be hard enough on us, or seeing things in a different way because they don't want to hurt our
Mm,
relationship. That can go either way with friends. You really need to understand the dynamic of the friendship that you have, and how some type of structure of accountability will affect that. Some relationships, people are really great at wearing those different hats and separating the this is my friend time versus the this is what we're here for, this is what we're
mm,
focusing on, and feelings not getting hurt. So family and friends, no family, some friends, but ultimately It's looking at what is my best fit. And it takes a little bit of courage, a little bit of getting out of ourselves, because we might have to talk to several different people. We might have to have some uncomfortable conversations at the very beginning to understand who's my best fit. How does this work? Are they going to provide me what I need in the way that I need it? Sometimes it's just being told something in a particular way.
Mm. Yeah, very, very true. I think if I just think that's maybe the first step for a lot of people, getting somebody who's accountable for them, and even if they're both trying, and they could be accountable for each other, just kind of pairing up like that. I think it does a world of good. And if you talk once every couple of days or whatever, you just, hey, I did this and this, and hey, great job, keep it up. What can I do? That's just encouragement, and it just helps. And even if they fall back, get back on that horse. I mean, it's just it goes a long way, Stephanie.
It does. And, having that reciprocal relationship is
Mm,
wonderful, because you have somebody kind of in the trenches with you, where you might not be at the same level, you might not be doing exactly the same things, but you have that place of relatability. You have a common goal in mind. And that that is really invaluable, because it comes back to this idea that I'm
mm.
not alone. I'm not the only one going through this.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I'm also a business owner, and sometimes business owners feel that way. We have peer groups. You get together, you talk about these kinds of things. Nobody can really understand what's happening. It's the same thing in weight loss. I mean, losing weight is one of the most difficult things a person can do. It's very, very hard. They got to
Mhm.
stay committed.
Well, it is very hard, and it is one of the most difficult things to do, because the odds are
Right.
stacked against us. I mean, it shows, depending on the study you're looking at, 85 to 95% of
Mm,
diets fail. So you look at something like that, and you almost think, why try? Why even put in the effort when this is not going to last for the long term? And so it's really starting to flip that internal dialogue, flip the attitude we have, that is it weight loss that I want, or is it the lifestyle and the habits that are contributing best to my health, to the results that I
mm.
want?
How does how does it or does discipline play a role in your life, Stephanie?
Discipline is important, and it comes through the system of
Mm,
routines. I'm a creature of habit. I don't like change. And so if I don't have routines in place, then I am not going to do the things that I have committed to. That I am going to do the things that I know support me in the best way. It really comes down to what are the various routines that we put into life, that we can not really check the boxes every day, but that we have that guiding point of coming back to, well, did I do this? Didn't I do this? Because when we're choosing those things in our routine for our greater good, when we don't do them, we will
mm.
know the effect. We'll feel the effect. And it comes right back around to those habits in, is it moving me to where I want to be, or am I staying stuck in where I'm at and using that almost as my badge of honor?
Very interesting take. And when you personally train, or you're instructing people on nutrition, do you mention discipline? Do you stress it?
Not outright in the word
Mm,
discipline, because again, that's one of those words that has a lot of emotional
right.
charge to it. But I absolutely discuss What are the things that are most important, and how are they going to become a part of
Hmm.
life? And, just like I'm going to exercise X number of times a week. Okay, we develop the discipline in doing that by starting somewhere and building that up. Not not everyone has the capacity to wake up one day and I'm going to work out 30 minutes, 3, 4, 5 times a week. Sometimes it is that person that I really only can do five
Hmm.
minutes. But we take that 5 minutes, put it in that structure of accountability. Are you getting it done? And then we grow it, and it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and beyond. It becomes 5 minutes over multiple days. We forget the cumulative effect of what
Hmm.
we do. That maybe if I didn't do a 30 or 45 or 60-minute workout, that it doesn't count for
Hmm.
some reason. But that 5 minutes over 6 days a week, that has a cumulative effect of, hey, look it, I worked for 30 minutes. And so it's building in then the accountability, building in the routine, and bringing it up to the place where you're capable and able that this is just what life is. This is what I do, instead of I'm so disciplined to always do
Hmm.
this. It's bringing it naturally into that structure of life.
Yeah, well said. I mean, when people ask me, when I mention I lose 140 pounds, the first thing, they say is, well, how'd you do it? Like there's some silver bullet, like, I climbed a tree every day or something. I just say discipline because discipline encaptures everything that we've discussed today. It's, accountability,
Absolutely.
focus and, sleep and nutrition, it's just, so that's kind of I don't know, maybe it's even too simple of an answer. I get a lot of pushback saying, well, you need more love and you need more compassion than discipline. And I think, well, don't you kind of need some self discipline even to have those? But I love the topic and I love to hear others' perspective on it.
Absolutely. And I think that you really describe it well in that, yes, it does take discipline because we're showing up, we're doing the things, and we're bringing it in at a
Hmm.
repeated level. It's not a one and done kind of thing. It's not the magic bullet. Having that discipline to come back day after day, do these different activities, engage in whatever it is, being conscious of our movement, being conscious of our sleep, being conscious of the food we're putting in our bodies. It is a discipline, but we don't always realize that because it's not always maybe the top of mind that this is a very disciplined
Hmm.
action.
Yeah, very well said. Very well said. Stephanie Loris, what motivates you?
What motivates me? A lot of things. Um, for me, I am a person of faith. And my one of my cornerstones is that the more I am taking care of myself, the more I am growing in every part of
Hmm.
myself. I am living and breathing into my purpose every day. And that looks very different sometimes because it might be that laser focus on how am I feeling physically. It might be some extra focus on, I'm really struggling in this area. How can I get some support emotionally? For me, I have PTSD. I deal with depression and
Hmm.
anxiety. So sometimes that needs a little extra focus. But ultimately, my drive, my motivation is, what is it that's feeding into my greater
Hmm.
purpose for walking this earth? And if I'm not taking care of myself, if I'm not doing the things, then I'm not capable. I'm not able to walk in that service for others.
Well said. Well said. And how do you measure success, Stephanie?
That I think is still one of those unwritten
Hmm.
answers. We often look at success by some type of tangible benchmark. But for me, success is, am I living in alignment with my values? And my values, I'm a pretty transparent person. So those values need to not only be lived out in my personal life, in my relationships, in my business. And if something's not in alignment, something doesn't feel right, then I'm not being successful at what I'm doing.
Very good and very inspirational. Well, Stephanie, absolute pleasure speaking with you today. I loved it. I think my hope is others will listen, get motivation, with this serious problem that we have in this, certainly in our country. I don't know what the statistics are worldwide, but I just think we would have handled the pandemic so much better. There's just been so many things we would have handled better if we were, in better physical condition. How can we get in touch with you?
Well, I am all over social
Yes.
media at some iteration of Heart and Soul Fitness and Wellness. Soul is spelled SOLE. The best way to find me though is straight on my website, Heart and Soul SOLEfit.com. That all my blog is there, all my goodies are there. There's a way to get on my calendar to talk about what is wellness to you? What do you want? And how to get there. And it might not be me because I know I'm not everyone's magic fit, but that's the great thing about cultivating an amazing referral network is because I could probably send you in the direction of somebody that's going to be a better
Mm.
fit.
Very, very great. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it. I'll include the links in the show notes. And thanks so much for your time. If I'm ever in the Arizona area, perhaps we all get together and have a cup of water, ice water.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Thanks so much for your time. You be well. Keep doing what you're doing. I really appreciate your time. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.